Count Reuven's Treasure is a notable Witcher 3 quest for one major reason. This is where Triss Merigold is tortured within earshot of Geralt. It's a gut-wrenching sequence that really toys with the player and all of the decisions they can make. But this quest also highlights the more restrictive nature of the decision system in the game. It makes me ask the question, do your choices actually matter in The Witcher 3? And to figure that out, let's do a quest analysis of Count Reuven's Treasure. Things start off with Geralt asking Sigi Reuven for information on Dandelion, which unexpectedly leads to Reuven recruiting Geralt to help him find some stolen treasure. Reuven is actually Sigmund Dijkstra, and this treasure was also stolen by our very own Dandelion, something Geralt and the player are made aware of right away. Geralt investigates how Dijkstra's vault was broken into, which leads him to this old house where the heist was planned. He learns that the treasure is in the hands of the Church of the Eternal Fire, and Triss Merigold concocts an intense plan, using herself as bait so that Geralt can exchange her for information on Dandelion and the treasure. The quest culminates with Geralt obtaining information from Caleb Menge, which may or may not be occurring simultaneously to Triss having her fingernails ripped off.
Oh, you bastard! No!
Oh god, I shudder whenever I think about this moment. But I think the more shocking part is that this sequence happens in a quest called Count Reuven's Treasure. I don't think anyone expects when they first started looking for this treasure that they were going to be slammed with the most intense gauntlet of dialogue choices in the game. Usually I don't consider dialogue in The Witcher 3 to be necessarily gameplay, but this sequence is absolutely gameplay. Because like the best Twitch shooters out there, it feels like every choice and every button press can determine the outcome. Some of this is because CDPR pulls a switcheroo on the player and changes how the dialogue choices work. Usually the white choices till now were always like contextual flavor, but here they can end the conversations prematurely and poorly at that. But I don't think this is CDPR being unfair. In fact, I feel like it's additive to the experience because they ease you into the chaos. These guys make it clear they aren't going to play nice with Triss.
You're done jesting, Merigold. For good.
And to deal with their hospitality, we are given a nice simple choice with 2 yellow options. This is the kind of choice we are familiar with. One will clearly keep the charade going, one will clearly end in a brouhaha. But this isn't about the choice per se, it's more about the player stealing themselves, because should they move on into the barracks, the guards just get more arrogant and more awful.
Just you wait. We'll take a fingernail or 3. That ought to get you singing.
And now we have another choice, but this time with an extra wishy-washy yellow option where Geralt tells them, take her, but don't torture her. And these paid torturers are like, why the hell would we listen to you? This is what we do. We are passionate about our craft. But since they are low-level grunts, Geralt can get back on track by choosing the correct option here, or he could just axie the guard in front of everyone, causing another eruption of the Eternal Fire. And that's still a pretty fairly standard choice, but I feel like it's there to tell you gotta start being decisive here. You've been working with these low-level grunts there, they're kind of easy, but now you're gonna be working with Caleb Menge. He's like a supervisor, he's responsible for company policy. And this isn't one of those companies where they're trying to wow you by putting like fancy LED TVs in the waiting room. No, they put you in a waiting room and then they torture your ex-girlfriend next door.
This little piggy went to market.
Meanwhile, Menge is eyeing Geralt up and down the entire time, and as he offers the Witcher a drink, Geralt can stall a bit, but it becomes immediately apparent that Menge is testing him at the same time that the game is testing the player. And this is a pretty easy test. I mean, the only white option here is pretty much stop torturing Triss, which clearly is not going to go well. So it's kind of a softball. I'm pretty sure most players know that that's going to end things in a fight. But it kind of foreshadows how the white choices become much more difficult. But for now, Geralt drinks and remarks that Menge must be checking if he's a Doppler with the silver goblet. And then we get 4 choices, 2 yellow and 2 white. The 2 yellow ones are clear as day, but this time those white choices are as we've come to expect in this game.
Got a silver sword on my back. That not enough?
It proves nothing. Dopplers can change their bodies at will into materials that look and feel like silver as well.
Yeah, these are the kinds of white choices I'm used to. They just give you contextual information and lore. They don't move anything forward. Is what I would be telling you if CDPR wasn't trying to trick us here. They're toying with us just like Menge is toying with Geralt. All of the choices here move the plot forward, not just the yellow ones. And while Menge is carefully observing how Geralt is reacting to Triss's torture, CDPR is manipulating us, so we also feel like we're in an emotional blender. It feels like anything can happen now. And things quickly become more destabilized when Menge demands to know why Geralt would turn on Triss, and we are offered up 4 yellow choices, and there's only one clear wrong answer. The rest are a crapshoot. Luckily, 2 of the remaining 3 options do keep the charade going. Either Geralt pretends that he's out for vengeance against Triss, or he relies on Menge's long-held biases by saying witchers do anything for coin.
Oh yeah, nearly forgot the mutations strip witches of feelings.
No, no more.
The combination of how vile Menge is, how difficult these choices are, and the audio of Triss being tortured is an unholy trinity. Because the player is already emotionally on edge, and then to throw a gameplay twist at them is just unkind. Similarly, I'm going to try to throw in some twists to this video here. I'm going to start trying to incorporate some of your comments into the videos. This is the first time I've done this. It might come off a little bit awkward here and, I don't know, creaky because it's a new experience, but let's give it a go. So Andy Johnson 1358 said one of the things he loves about this quest is how you have to fight your own sense of compassion during the sequence to get the best results. And I couldn't agree more because oh god, that transition that didn't work. Oh, I didn't think it was that awkward. I thought it was going pretty well, but I'm just trying to make a point here that I agree completely with Andy Johnson, because the first time I played the game, I'd had enough as soon as Triss cried out once. I did not have the intestinal fortitude to go forward, and even if I had, I don't know if I would have made the right choices. And that is such a great emotional whirlwind that CDPR stirred up here, which, should you play it right, ends with a fantastic final choice which one-ups all of the little twists I'd already mentioned. And it's obvious that the last option is a we are gonna fight this out kind of option, even though it's white. But what about that other white option? It mentions Reuven's treasure, and that's just gotta be contextual information, right? Well, it makes no sense whatsoever to ask about this during a tense negotiation, and the game punishes you accordingly for it. The conversation doesn't end right away. You can still ask about Dandelion afterwards, but the outcome has already been determined. Because asking about some random criminal's treasure made it so Menge will not trust Geralt now. And you can hear the difference in his tone.
A degenerate bard for information about Philippa. Tempting offer, I admit. First you ask about a criminal's treasure. Now you want me to let loose a blaspheming degenerate.
So he refuses you in both, but in the first example, there's clearly some wiggle room left. In the second one though, Geralt has used up that wiggle room by asking about the treasure first, and that is such a masterstroke. The way CDPR strings us along, it feels like every moment of this dialogue sequence was about playing with our emotions and getting us to try to slip up, and this final choice is a great exclamation point. But even though the brilliance here is how CDPR plays with the mechanics on how impactful your choices are, in the big picture, your choices actually don't impact the story and how it plays out. Triss is not going to die no matter what. Menge's not just going to hand over Dandelion even if you let Triss be tortured to the full extent, and you're going to be able to romance her regardless of how everything plays out with the Eternal Fire. Nothing gets impacted in the long run. And one of the more frustrating bits here for me is that Triss pleads with Geralt to not interfere in the plan, that saving Ciri and Dandelion is worth her putting herself willingly through this kind of pain, but her reaction if she does get tortured for a bit and then Geralt can't go through with the plan entirely doesn't work for me.
I think that's all of them. That was close.
I'd say that having your fingernails ripped off is close. Do they have anything more insightful to say?
What happened? I thought Menge took the bait.
No, he didn't. Sensed right off it was all a front. Know what? Fuck you. Had enough of this masquerade.
Guards! In here!
So Geralt just acts like he had nothing to do with this, that the jig was up no matter what. This is CDPR playing it safe. They make sure that Triss doesn't harbor any ill will towards Geralt, and that Geralt doesn't blame himself for these events. We got powerful emotions during the torture sequence, but if Geralt renders it so that Triss's torture was pointless, then those emotional repercussions are ignored. But if that sounds like I'm complaining about how Triss is handled in Count Reuven's treasure, let me assure you I think she's the real treasure of this quest.
Take these shackles. Put them on me.
Triss, sure you want to do this? Out here, with everyone watching?
Yes, you get to flirt with Triss in this quest, something I'm apparently not alone in doing. Paul Bowler 5345 said that he tries to flirt with Triss as much as he can in this quest, and I can't really fault him.
Trying to be meta, it doesn't work. It's too awkward.
It's not that awkward. It's not nearly as awkward as Geralt and Triss trying to explain their relationship to Dijkstra, which they have to do in this quest. And that's something I enjoy here, that these two sound very much like super cringy exes who clearly still have feelings for each other but also have a ton of baggage. But the key to Triss's character arc is she isn't defined by her relationship with Geralt alone. She puts herself through a lot of pain just for Dandelion and Ciri, and her involvement with Dijkstra's treasure hunt stems from her needing money to help the other mages in Novigrad. Going out and about like this is a constant danger for Triss, and these selfless acts of hers go a long way in making the player care for and empathize with her.
The hunters. They won't treat me like a lady, but I'll survive. Might hurt a bit, but Ciri, she's what matters.
And this is why the torture sequence works so well, because we care so much about Triss. But for my money, my favorite emotional beat is after she gets her revenge on Caleb Menge. Geralt tells her that they needed him alive to find Dandelion, and there are so many emotions that come out.
Shit. I'm sorry, Geralt. I should have thought it through, but when I saw him,
That remorse, it's so palpable in her voice, just makes me care for her so much more. And it contrasts to Yennefer, who is a much more of a get the job done at all costs kind of girl later in the game. And this isn't me bashing Yennefer or anything. I mean, in fact, some of the commenters really like Yennefer. Ewan MCC01 said, Yennefer forever. Guess he must have died by now. But yeah, my point is that...
You still have your glasses on, take them off!
Thanks. Yeah, my point is though, even though your choices don't change things in the story down the line, Triss's arc is close to perfection in this quest. Close, but not perfect, because if you don't make it through the torture sequence, Menge never tells Geralt where Dandelion's held, and so the game manufactures a way for them to get this info, and they meet with one of Menge's spies. But the issue here is that the impact of this sequence is muted if you stop the charade before any torture happened. Without that trauma, Triss's anger and revulsion here doesn't do much for me. In my opinion, the Church of the Eternal Fire arc is not given enough focus or screen time prior to this quest. I never really felt what their presence means on Novigrad outside of a few bits of dialogue from Triss and one or two cutscenes. And so for Triss to have her complete emotional arc, you kind of need the torture scene. And without it, the spy sequence and Triss's emotions during it fall flat. I will give them credit for creating this whole spy sequence, because they could have just had Geralt and Triss find Dandelion's location conveniently in Menge's desk. Then we would have gotten really no emotional payoff for anything Triss. We needed to be shown Triss's potential for violence.
Had enough?
And we needed the moment where she seems at odds with herself.
How do you feel?
Base. Cruel. Vile. I could go on.
And despite my quibbles, I appreciate how different this portion is. And speaking of different, if you don't get through the torture sequence, you have a huge battle with an entire chapter of the Eternal Fire. This is routine Witcher 3 combat, but it does feel larger in scale compared to the fights to this point in the main quest, at least with human characters. But sadly, combat in The Witcher 3 does nothing for me, and by the fourth time I got this fight when recording footage for all the variations in this quest, I had enough. And it's just sad that this happened during the version where Geralt asks about the treasure, and so while I do have the footage of him learning the location of the treasure from Menge, I didn't get to see when Geralt relays that info to Dijkstra. So unfortunately that means I don't have the footage of Geralt and Dijkstra's conversation afterwards. However, some of my viewers do. Let's go to those comments again. And the guy back there should be pretty quiet. He was pretty nice last time, so that's good. So D4N737 said that if Geralt tells Dijkstra where the treasure is, that allows for Geralt to ask him for assistance in the siege on Kaer Morhen. And I really wish I got that footage because...
memorize what you're saying. Stop reading off the screen. It's so stupid. Just memorize it, you idiot. So bad.
This guy's being critical of my ability to make videos. The only way to feel better about myself is to be critical of this quest and its weakest parts. All of the gameplay preceding the Triss segment. Because remember, this quest is about finding Dijkstra's treasure, and that's how the quest plays out for the first half. And it's uninspired. Geralt searches through these generic Novigrad sewers, which feel identical to like 72 previous quests. Dijkstra teases the player by implying that there's some terrible monstrosity down in the sewers.
Then I heard a bubbling. Something crawled out of the water. I value the lives of my men, I do. But I value my own even more.
Of course, all he's talking about are drowners, like the most common enemy in The Witcher 3. That would be like in real life if I was like, we gotta get out of there, there was a bee there.
Oh, bees are super dangerous. You could die of anaphylactic shock. Pick something else.
Fine. Like, oh, there was a butterfly shaped like a bee. I don't know. All of the gameplay elements throughout this first half of the quest just don't do anything for me. Bart the Troll is introduced, but he plays no part in the quest other than as comic relief, and a way to humanize Dijkstra, something his personality does very well by itself, as I'll discuss later. Meanwhile, it doesn't help that these are some of the most bland clues that Geralt could possibly find.
Pipe's great. Fine grading.
Pipe's great and fine grading. Didn't realize Geralt had such a fondness for sewer infrastructure. Yeah, I know he's not actually praising the quality of the pipes and the grates, and the scenes while Geralt and Dijkstra investigate the bathhouse actually have some really good banter, but I wish this part in the sewers and Geralt investigating Margrave Henkel's house were trimmed down. I know there are plot reasons for why he has to go through all of this, otherwise I'd complain that Dijkstra could have just figured it all out on his own. But it still feels like 15 minutes of padding, because the whole point of going through this exercise is to eventually learn that Dudu was in contact with Ciri, and that he was captured by Menge along with Dandelion. But it still grates that we have to put up with eye-rolling clues like this.
Footprints.
Good job, Geralt, you found footprints in a house. But this part is not all bad, it's not that long, it's not overly bloated like some of the other Novigrad quests, and it does contain some awesome character work for Sigismund Dijkstra, a character that readers of the book will be familiar with. And even if you aren't familiar with the books, we immediately get a sense of who he is and his and Geralt's relationship.
Right mess that was. Never thought I'd be glad to see the man responsible for my taking frequent baths.
If you're any cleaner for it, gotta say it was worth breaking your ankle.
This shared history and animosity gives a lot of weight and gravitas to all of their interactions, even if I think the game makes it kind of hard to understand what Dijkstra's role actually used to be, particularly because we don't meet Radovid until after we meet Dijkstra. And I also don't think the game dives nearly enough into Dijkstra's movements through the Novigrad criminal underworld as Sigi Reuven, but I'll save my discussion of that for my Get Junior quest analysis. For now, all you gotta know is that Dijkstra is hilarious.
I know I've been unbearable lately, but at my age, the menopause, what with hot flushes and violent mood swings.
And the duo of Dijkstra and Geralt is so fun to listen to.
How'd you find out?
I asked the questions here.
Not true. That was a statement.
So very quickly, they make Dijkstra into a fully realized, unique, and entertaining character for Geralt to play off of. But unfortunately, Dijkstra amounts to no more than window dressing in this quest. It's incredibly charismatic window dressing, but still window dressing no less. And very unthreatening window dressing at that. Like, Geralt knows that Dandelion stole Dijkstra's treasure, and this fact should make things a little bit more intense, but does that ever become consequential here? No, none of the choices really address it. The player isn't able to make any choices with Dijkstra that could be mistakes. We don't get to accidentally slip up about Dandelion. And the thing is, Dijkstra does catch Geralt in lies twice.
If you thought I'd fall for that tale you just pulled out of your arse, you don't know me one bit.
What?
You knew from the start who robbed me, but you didn't deign to share that information with me.
And in each situation, the player is given a choice on how to respond, but the responses are just some form of deflection, like, yeah, I lied, so what? And then both times, Dijkstra just lets him off the hook, once by telling him to stop being so insolent, and then the second time by frickin' paying him for looking for his treasure. And he even gives him information that he might need to find Dandelion and save him, the man who stole Dijkstra's money! This all just makes Dijkstra not feel dangerous at all, despite the game's many attempts at doing just that.
How do you know you can trust me?
I don't. Counting on your survival instinct. Slip up, and I'll kill you. You abused my trust.
I can live with that.
This time, yes, you'll live. And now, time to settle things.
That a threat?
Definitely not, Geralt. Dijkstra's not going to do anything here. Some of this is because CDPR clearly has plans for Dijkstra in the narrative and they didn't want a permanent roadblock between him and Geralt here. But also, they just didn't put in the legwork to make Dijkstra into a viable threat. So it just doesn't work when he says, let's settle things. But for now, it's time for us to settle some things. And you know I'm serious because I'm torturing someone for the last 20 minutes over there, so gotta pay attention here. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you don't like the video, you probably should like and subscribe anyway.
Oh, this whole thing is so dumb. Why would anyone like and subscribe
That's
to
it.
the channel?
I have had enough
piece
of this.
crap. Oh.
Listen, you had better shut that. There's no one here.